Good evening and welcome to the third in a series of talks under the theme Public Policy and the Black Church. We have enjoyed the two conversations before tonight, uh, engaging urgently area clergy in the conversation around public policy. As we are just minutes away from voting for the next president of the United States, and as we are minutes away from a whole lot of changes that seem to be on the horizon, this is a particularly important evening. But I am especially proud to have with us tonight as we think about the legacy of Kelly Miller Smith Sr. I'm especially proud to have not only his son, but others who have walked the walk and talked the talk. And most particularly, I'm happy to have my colleague, the Reverend Dr. Amy E. Steele, PhD. She's an assistant dean for the Student Affairs and Community Life at Vanderbilt Divinity School. She works with the community in the areas of worship and spiritual formation, exigency plans, student government, social justice, and the practice of ministry. She facilitates a seminar in field education, teaches courses on Howard Thurman, and chairs the Committee for Lifelong Learning. She's a double door, having both earned her Master of Divinity and Doctorate of Philosophy in Religion in a concentration Ethics and Society from Vanderbilt. She has published articles, book reviews, and is working on a book-length manuscript on Thurman. She is an associate pastor at Cornerstone United Methodist Church in Smyrna, Tennessee, and the mother to a handsome high school junior with a knack for history. Without further ado, I am honored to turn it over to Dr. Steele.
Thank you, Dr. Smallwood, my friend and my colleague, for such a gracious introduction, to you and to Dr. Harris for the invitation to moderate such an exciting panel. My gratitude also goes out to Dr. Emily Towns, Dean of the Divinity School and the Director of the Public Theology and Racial Justice Collaborative, and to Shatika and Erica, working behind the scenes to keep us all on track. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am so tickled to join this conversation tonight on public policy in the Black Church. With us are some of Nashville's most engaging and insightful clergy. And I have asked our panelists to please introduce themselves by telling us their name, the place where they serve, and to begin the conversation answering this question: what has shaped and continues to shape your prophetic voice? So I give you my colleagues in alpha order, beginning with the Reverend Dr. Napoleon Harris.
Sorry, I'm muted. Let me start all over again. Good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for thank you for this opportunity to share. I'm so excited and delighted to be here for such an auspicious occasion, and certainly to be here with people that I call friends in ministry, friends in life, and certainly friends in the work of justice. With that being said, my name is Napoleon Harris. I am privileged to serve as the proud pastor of First Baptist Church, South Englewood. They are, in my estimation, the best group of people God ever put together. We're located out east. What is now referred to as East Nashville, but prior to gentrification, we called it out east, and in that part of the city. What has shaped and continues to shape my practice of theology, I'm going to say first is Black liberation theology, and also womanist theology as well. The School of Prophets certainly has played one of the most critical roles in my formation and continues to, because of outreach activities like this. Although I am not an alum of American Baptist College, the Sacred Hill has certainly been a strong part of my spiritual formation, from my father, who is a graduate and was my first pastor, to all of the many wonderful men and women of the cloth and call to action that they have birthed, and the various outreach activities that continue to pour out of the school. The congregation that I love and lead in love continues to shape me. Anything that I do publicly is an extension of the love that I have for them. Love in of itself centers my theology and my action, my understanding of love and my understanding of Christ, my understanding of God who is love. Scripture-wise, Matthew 25 is always echoing in my ear. And also attending an HBCU, Tennessee State University. My family continues to shape my practice and my thoughts, particularly my sister, the Reverend Nikki Tolliver, whom I love dearly, is a brilliant mind. I would not fathom a day without talking with her sociologically and theologically. And of course, my friends, many of which who are on this call today. I thank God for the likes of the Reverend Kelly X and Reverend Sharizna, who keep me in line. I admit I am born in the sin of patriarchy, born in it and shaped in it. And I'm thankful to have colleagues who call me on it and call my attention to areas of lapse as I continue to strive to be the best person that I can be. And in conclusion, those are the areas that shape me and continue to shape me. And I, again, thank you for the opportunity to share tonight. I look forward to an engaging dialogue.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Reverend Sharizna John Marie, and I serve as the Director for Racial Justice Ministries at Scarrett Bennett Center here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm excited to do this work, feel very called and very passionate about doing the work of racial justice there at Scarrett Bennett Center. We're called to shift the narrative, to change culture. Our work there at Scarrett Bennett is about shifting the narrative from white allyship to co-conspirator. And so we begin this work in inviting our community and friends to come on the journey of becoming co-conspirator, to dismantle white supremacy and to give room and space for Black communities to heal from racial trauma. That too is a form of dismantling white supremacy. I'm grateful to be here tonight with many of my friends and friends who I call family, for we have spent many amazing bonds together doing this work that we're all called to do. I'm grateful for the invitation from the Reverend Dr. Teresa Smallwood and Dr. Harris, who was a former pastor and professor of mine while I was at Vanderbilt Divinity School. When I think about the question, what shapes and form me as a prophetic voice, I don't think there's one thing that shapes me. There's so much, beginning with the foundation of my faith, growing up in the church, and knowing and learning and understanding my identity as what it means to be a disciples of Christ. I think of my favorite scripture, Luke 4, when Jesus enters into the temple and he declares that he's been anointed by the Spirit of God. And what happens when you're anointed, when you've been anointed by the Holy Spirit to go forth and do the work? I try to live my life best as Jesus, to be anointed by the Holy Spirit to do this work prophetically, publicly, and that's to dismantle systems that keep the marginalized oppressed. I think about what shapes me as a public figure. I think of my mom and dad. I often say my father taught me how to pray with my words, and it was my mother who taught me how to pray with my feet. My mother is the perfect example. She is, for me, the imago Dei in flesh. watching her live out what it means to be a prophet among us has given me permission to rise unapologetically as a woman when women are told to stay silent, when women are told to be polite, when women are told to not speak and teach to men. I was taught by my own mother how to be a womaness. When I think about what shapes me as a pastor, as one who's called to lift up those who are marginalized and broken by systems of oppression, I think about Mother Katie Cannon, who tells us that we must do the work our souls must have. And so for me, it is important for me to live out my life in a way that allows for me to wake up every morning knowing that I'm living my life with purpose. When I think about what shapes me to be a prophetic voice in public spaces, when it's dangerous to speak as a Black woman because they try to come for you, I think about Mother Audre Lorde, who says, when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcome, but when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it's better to speak anyway. She taught me that even in fear to speak up, for we are not meant to just survive. There's so many ways in which I am shaped and formed. And finally, I'd like to suggest that one of the ways that I'm shaped and formed in my work to ministry is the ministries that God called me to. I had the privilege to work and to be the dean of chapel at a university working with college students. And I watched them watch me rise to the occasion. I watched them watch me and gave them freedom to rise to the occasion. And we, in just 2 years, shift the whole campus where the students begin to live into social justice right there on the campus because they had a dean of chapel that was not afraid to live out her purpose and gave them permission to rise, to find their purpose and to live that out. I'm grateful to be here again tonight to share in this space with friends and friends who are family as we do this work of what it means to be the Black church. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing okay. My name is Kelly Miller Smith Jr., and I pastor proudly the First Baptist Church, Capitol Hill, here in Nashville, Tennessee. I've been here as a pastor for 10 years here at First Baptist Church, Capitol Hill. Previously, I was pastoring over in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Mount Olive Baptist Church. Coming to First Baptist is actually a homecoming. It has been a homecoming for me because it is a congregation of which I grew up in and where my father served as pastor for some 33 years. There are actually 3 pastors that have served between my dad and me, my father being pastor number 16 of the congregation, I'm being pastor number 20 of the congregation. And to talk about what has driven me and to help me to understand the importance of having a prophetic voice in terms of the church as well as the community and what's going on is because I grew up in it. I was steeped in it, from not only my father being very integral in terms of sharing that prophetic voice, but also his engaging. So he was not just the spokesperson, but also one who was very much engaged in helping people to see and to know and to understand issues of justice, issues of equity, issues of how to desegregate and other kind of things because of what has happened and what was going on here in the city of Nashville. I am old enough to be able to remember those days. I'm old enough to remember seeing where rocks were thrown at protesters. I'm old enough to remember a lot of the issues that were going on here in Nashville with the sit-ins, with the boycotts. We would have economic boycotts here in the city of Nashville and other things that have happened and that were going on that would be a part of our regular conversation, things that we would talk about in our home, things we knew about. When there were stories on the news, they would be reinterpreted in the proper context, which is what my father would help us to see and to know and understand. So my call to the voice has been because it's been a part of my legacy, it's been a part of my heritage, but it's also because of the fact that my belief that the church cannot be silent. And too often the church has been silent, or the church has spoken on issues that are not as relevant as what's going on today. As was mentioned earlier about Luke 4, we understand that is what Jesus' call was all about. We also know that the Old Testament and the New Testament both speak about social justice, speak about liberation, speak about speaking on behalf of those who are the oppressed. Those are very strong, very clear messages that come through the Bible. It's unfortunate and that understanding is not shared by people from all walks of life. But I'm grateful to have this opportunity to come and to share in this dialogue. And I pray that it will help us to keep our eyes open and our mouths open and our feet moving, as it's been mentioned already, in a direction that's going to make a difference in today's society, but also making it a better place, a better world for our generations that come behind us.
Good evening, everyone. Let me first start by sharing how excited and proud I am and grateful that I am to be a part of this panel. My name is Minister Nikki Tolliver, and I have the privilege to serve at the Watson Grove Missionary Baptist Church in South Nashville as the Minister of Assimilation and Growth. I am also a second-year MTS student at the Vanderbilt Divinity School and happen to be the newly elected Vice President of the Black SIMS organization. As far as what shapes me, I would start from the beginning. My parents have shaped me. My father, or our father being my first pastor, and my mother co-laboring with him, taught us what it looked like to serve people and not to have the ministry serve us. Along with my brother, who is also a panelist here, and I'm excited to be on a panel with him. I think the Black church within itself has also helped to shape who I am and my voice. I have mentors that are far-reaching, some that I have never ever met, like Angela Davis, one that I will never ever meet on this side of eternity, James Baldwin, ones like Ashada Shakur, Martin Luther King Jr., but I also have mentors who are close. I think in the congregation and community that I serve, that South Nashville, not the gentrified South Nashville, but the South Nashville that says South with an F instead of a TH, that South Nashville, the community that I'm able to serve. Also being a student at VDS, I would say that my professors and deans helped to shape me, whether that is through lectures, panels, webinars, or just conversation in the halls. Professors, deans, and also my fellow students helped to shape me. I would also say the culture. I'm an 80s baby, so I love hip hop. And hip hop rap has helped to shape my voice, from artists from Rhapsody to Kendrick Lamar, Lizzo, Meg Thee Stallion, Beyonce, who's not a rapper, but you can throw her in that category. Jay-Z, Nas, Rakim, Queen Latifah, those artists. Also, I would say jazz and blues have helped to shape my voice, the improv of those. And also my co-panelists on tonight have also helped to shape who I am, whether that is by holding me accountable in correction and correcting me, or just giving me an example of what prophetic ministry and preaching looks like. My friends also helped to shape my voice. And I would lastly say that my hope for the future helps to shape my hope in the world I hope to leave behind for the following generations help to shape my voice and who I am and how I approach ministry. So in closing, I want to say thank you again to Dean Steele, to Dr. Harris, and Dr. Smallwood for having me on this panel tonight.
Good evening. I'm David Tucker. I pastor the Beach Creek Baptist Church over in North Nashville, 3101 Curtis Street. Great congregation. I've been here over 13 years, and such a great congregation that years ago in a business meeting, conversation arose around some of my civic activities, and one of the deacons screamed full-throatedly in a meeting that, "Pastor, don't worry about it. If you get in trouble, we'll make you bail." It was a funny moment, but it's one that rested with me. I'm sure as most of us pastors would say, and I would too, is that I serve the best group of people that I've ever encountered. Born and raised here in Nashville. What has shaped me? Well, I found my voice at American Baptist College. I've been in the ministry 20 years, and I turned 60 a couple weeks ago. So this is a second journey for me. And it was at ABC under the presidency of my now friend, Dr. Forrest Harris, who has been a journey person with me throughout this journey. And at ABC, I was introduced to conversation partners such as Cone and Alice Walker and Lewis and Baldwin and Thurman. And they all helped shape me. Like Reverend Harris said earlier, I've been more shaped by liberationist and womanist thinking with some African spirituality, in that we're the first people. So when in Genesis, in our own mythology of the story, that first man that stood up was a Black man. All that I bring to this moment with me as I continue to learn more and to try to serve out this thing that started out as a calling, but for me has become more, whereas calling is a vocation, there's a derivative of that, which is the advocate, which is the advocare, the one who's been called to the aid of another. And that's how I kind of construct what I see pastoring as, is one that is called to the aid of another. And I try to work that out. In the medieval church, there was the office of the curate. The curate was literally the curer of souls. And I'm informed by that as it comes to bear on the right now that is against everything that stands in the way of human flourishing and thriving. For me, that's the mandate of the gospel. Luke 4 is one of my guiding texts. And and try to be integrous to that regard. And oftentimes the consequences that come with that, you feel that you're by yourself. But one thing I've learned to appreciate is every now and then you get a couple wins. And it's in the win is where I think what sustains me and what keeps me moving is that hope is not like hype. They look the same, they run the same course, but hype fizzles out. But for me, hope always delivers. So it's inside of that, there's a whole lot of other folk. I've been helped by the Vanderbilt Divinity School, by those who have passed through there, the great scholars and preachers, many of them still there. Dean Towns, a person I know more about her than she knows about me, and her work, Reverend Dr. Smallwood. All these folk have been impactful for me. So I just thank you for this opportunity to just come to this moment and share.
Good evening. I am Reverend Kelly X. I am the pastor of the Village Church in Madison, Tennessee, an African-centered Christian church called to worship God, study the Bible inquisitively, and to cultivate leaders to spread God's transformative love. I am also a part of the first cohort of chaplain residents at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, and I'm very excited about the work, what it means to do ministry both within churches, but also within hospitals. What forms and shapes my prophetic voice? There are so many things, but first and foremost, that starts really with my parents, with my mother, Clara Mae Murray, and my father, Stanford Murray Sr., who were persistent and loving in the way in which they introduced me to Christ, and the way in which they lived a life of example of love and support for one another, and who made sure that my brothers and I were at church every single Sunday, and created an opportunity for us to build relationship and really lifelong friendships within the community of the church life. And then I would say that the next thing that really does that is that in '97, when I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to attend the great Tennessee State University, my time at HBCU, an opportunity for me to really both learn about my people and to be a part, but also an opportunity to really engage within African and African-American history. And it is in that time there that I had an opportunity to really come in contact with a way in which to practice Christianity in a way that honored my African ancestry and honored the fact that Christianity is an African-centered religion that comes out of North Africa. And I learned that at the Village Church, where I now pastor, that space really allowed me to see myself in the text, to see who I am and what I do. And in that space, allow me to accept a call on my life that I was not sure I could have because of the body that I was born into. But it was in that space that I realized that I am called and that I could do this work of ministry, and not just ministry that is from a pulpit, but ministry that is in the lives of people, that is making real change and affecting folks on a personal level. And so with that, my opportunity and my time at Vanderbilt Divinity School, what a beautiful time that really introduced me to liberation theology, introduced me to womanist theology, which then allowed me to put that next to what I had learned about African culture and African spirituality, and those things coming together reminded me and let me know that it is the work of the church to then speak truth to power, to then to do the work that is necessary, and to really put a good mold and a good foundation for Micah 6:8 type of work, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with our God. That was really a part of what has really kind of formed who I am. Also, I'm going to add some literature. Toni Morrison's work. Toni Morrison's work in Beloved, as with Baby Suggs and The Clearing. My God, the ability for her to stand there and say that down yonder they don't love your hands, but you need to love your hands. You need to love your skin. That a firmness of Blackness and Black folks being the Imago Dei, being made in the very image of God. That really forms my prophetic voice, and it also helps form me to do this work in a woman's body, to do it in the way that is truly feminine for me, not feminine for others, but what I do feminine, and speak that in that particular way that speaks to me. But also I think about also the Afrofuturistic work of Octavia Butler. And the ways in which, to be very honest, and the parable of the sword, she really spoke about to 2020 before we even knew it. That work really then allows for me to have a conversation with what is happening then, now, and as we go forth. And then also, but finally, that which really forms my prophetic voice is my husband and my children, the two children that we created, one of which whose birthday today. I'm going to do a shout out, a big love to my daughter, Satira, who is 13. I am the mother of teenagers who are living in this world. And for that reason, my prophetic voice, I believe it is important for to do the work that then speaks and creates a better future than what we already experience it. And so I think about the sixth principle of Kwanzaa, which is Kuumba, which means creativity. And it says to do always as much as we can in the way that we can in order to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than we inherited it. And so my work is to do it better and to inspire others to do that thing better with the use of scripture, with Matthew 25 and what we do for the least of these, and living up to the legacy and the life that Christ did in his life. And importantly, not just in the death and resurrection, but the very much so the on the feet, on the ground work of Jesus Christ. That really forms that for me. Man.
My, what an amazing panel. The authenticity and the transparency of these leaders is just so inspiring. There for a minute, I thought, you know what, we don't need a moderator, we need an usher. But as we do it in the Black church, we combine both head and heart. And so we do have some work before us tonight. So I am going to pose our first question. And if you'll permit me, I'm going to set the question up and then invite Minister Tolliver and then Reverend Tucker and Dr. Smith, if you would respond to this question. So the first question is about Breonna Taylor, policing, and the selection of Nashville's next police chief. And I'm going to begin with a memory. In 1982, then Assistant Dean of Vanderbilt Divinity School, Kelly Miller Smith Sr., invited Professor Harmon Ray, who taught courses on the theology of crime and justice, to speak on, and this was the topic, jobs, prison, rehabilitation, mission for the church. I'm going to quote from an article which was a reprint of Professor Harmon Ray's lecture, where he says this, and I quote, "After the Civil War, the white power structure, whether Southern or Northern, needed to do two things in the Confederate States. One, reestablish white dominance over recently freed slaves so as to control the Black population, and two, develop a large pool of cheap labor to attract Northern capital and man the factories of the new regional industrial revolution. This putting the economy of the so-called New South on a solid footing." Ray goes on to say that almost immediately after the Civil War ended, two interesting things happened. One, the percentage of the population of the Tennessee State Prison, which was Black, rose dramatically from 33% in 1865 to 58% in 1867, then to 64% in 1869. In 1866, the practice of convict leasing began in Tennessee, whereby the state rented out its prisoners to work in private industries at a low rate. This was especially frequent amongst the coal mining, farming, and railroad community. So I just want to say, the historical record and the contemporary record has much in common. with the economic and cultural impact of policing of Black, brown, and poor white people. So let me ask you this question. What policy changes would you like to see that might prevent cases like Breonna Taylor and others? And if there are to be fundamental changes in 21st century policing, what experience must the new Nashville police chief, one of 5 finalists, bring to the table? Let's hear from you all.
Well, I'll start off by saying, one, there was a gross miscarriage of justice in Louisville, Kentucky. And still we are stating and shouting, arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor. I would also say that I think there needs to be some fundamental changes, like in officer-involved shootings, that the grand jury transcripts are automatically released in those cases, that police officers receive the same benefit of the doubt in these shootings that citizens do, which is very little. Black citizens receive very little in these situations. I don't have much to say here. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and was harassed by the cops a lot. And so anytime somebody says police, that NWA song reverberates through my ears. I will say defund the police. And I'm going to release my time to Pastor Tucker. I know he's been involved in the work of demilitarizing the police here locally in the Nashville Police Department for over 20 years and has worked closely with those. So I think anything else I have to say would not be appropriate about the police. So I'm going to release and hand over my time to Pastor Tucker.
Wow, I appreciate that, Reverend Tolliver. I don't know about all of that, but I was thinking about the question. Policies to me normally are guidelines for a pre-constructed system. And I'm hoping that we can have some systemic change. But it may be that we only end up with some policy reforms that would leave the system intact. I think Harmon Ray, Lord bless his soul, was dead on it. Others have substantiated it, the new Jim Crow, Just Mercy, and this Until We Reckon book, this hadn't been out too long, that talks about the whole carceral state that we live in. So if we're not going to think about redoing it and reimagining it, we're going to end up with policy changes in a bad system. But one of the things that I would like to do with the incoming police chief is to hand them the Policing Project report and the Driving While Black report, and to tell them and to ask them to operationalize that to me in a way that you can give me a timeline of doing away with the disproportionate impact of the current policing philosophies on Black, brown, and poor folk. So I need to hear, don't talk to me about taking ice cream and biscuits and stuff and running a food pantry. There are other places that can handle that. If we really, truly want to be progressive and imaginative, we're going to have to look at it another way. When we say community policing, to me, what I hear is really policing the community. I think some of the training that is currently done does not need to be done by law enforcement personnel. Currently, most police departments who are even doing implicit bias type training contract with companies to present the training that typically only train law enforcement folks. Bring in folks from the community to help you understand. So I'm looking for somebody who's going to be open, who is going to understand and acknowledge. And that's what Nashville, I think Cooper tried to do it a few months back, but the police department has not acknowledged the harm that its current practices have enacted upon the bodies of Black, brown, and poor folk. So I think whoever it is, the city, its citizens, the COB must hold them accountable and not allow what has become so normative, the way in which we just get used to this stuff happening. So I don't know whether that's a clear response there, Dr. Steele, but that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Well, I think what Reverend Tucker was mentioning there at the end is a key part, and that is the whole business of training. Part of the challenge is that when police officers are trained, they're probably not trained in such a way that helps them to understand that they're not a military that is being established, but what they really are, it is theoretically what is on the side of many police cars in many cities. They are peace officers, and therefore their understanding should be that I'm not going in here to kick tail and to create, and to create a kind of police state, but I'm going in here to try to help and to facilitate for people to get along with each other, for them to be able to understand that all of us are citizens here in these communities, and that we all, borrowing the words of Rodney King, we all just want to get along with one another. And the challenge is that we create these hierarchical systems, hierarchical entities within our society, and so therefore, it becomes an issue of, either you're going to take this hierarchy or you're going to take that hierarchy, and understanding that all of us have our high moments and our low moments as it pertains to living. And so police are taught and trained in such ways that cause them to feel as if, okay, I am a force, I have weapons, I have other things that are with me. Tucker mentioned a moment ago about policies. Yeah, there needs to be policy changes, but even more than policy changes, there need heart changes. And you would think, I used to think, and I'm beginning to have to reassess this, that with more and more persons growing up in non-segregated situations, particularly urban settings, not integrated, but desegregated. There are more white kids who have gone to school, unless they've gone to private school, but if they've gone to public schools, they've gone to school with Black kids. If they've gone to public schools, talking about the urban settings, then they live in communities where Blacks have lived as well. My thought was a few years ago was that that because of the fact people are growing up in communities where they can see the kind of diversity, that they would be more acclimated, they will be more understanding, they'll be more have a greater desire to be engaged in relationships with one another. But we're discovering, as what's happened 4 years ago with the election of Donald Trump as president, and what we see continuing to break through in so many ugly and negative ways, that it did not get better, but it's gotten worse. And part of it is because of what has been instilled in others. Now you say, how does all this do with police? My thinking is that the police are a product of the environments for which they come. And if their environments are suggesting that this is what we do, this is how we see people, this is how we treat people, then we go kick in a door, and anything that looks like trouble, then we shoot to kill. We talk about the Breonna Taylor thing. I saw a meme or something posted on Facebook. It is interesting that the only person who got charged was charged because his bullet missed, and not because of the fact that he hit this woman 7, 8 times, whatever the case may be. Let me say one other thing about the Breonna Taylor thing. There's an article that's out today where some persons on the grand jury have said that they did not know what all their options were. This Black attorney general for their state of Kentucky dissuaded them from understanding and believing that, yes, first-degree murder and homicide was actually on the table, and that they were saying the worst you can put on them is to give him this reckless endangerment thing. And that's a sad commentary, again, on the mentality of A.G. Cameron. It is a sad commentary on a society that is finding that is acceptable. It's a sad commentary on the policies that will allow for that. It's a sad commentary on people who seem to be content with, okay, now we've gotten this out of our way. We have not gotten it out of our way.
That is so true. Thank you. Such excellent responses from each of you. And it really reminds me of the way in which the Black church has always interwoven theology and a critique on culture, right? And so this next question is for everyone. And I want to argue that the rich symbols of the church, I'm going to talk a little bit about baptism, really, as a sign of rebirth into a new extended family. And what some people call the Lord's Supper, communion, or Eucharist, that being a symbol of an invitation to a new ancestral meal. That these are what, and I'm gonna borrow from Dr. Reverend William Barber, he talks some about instruments of redemption, that these symbols and the theology that we bring to these symbols are instruments of redemption. So I want to invite each of you, if you would talk for just a couple of minutes about, and you've given us some of this already, but continuation of the theology that really shapes your public engagement and how you understand your own involvement or engagement with public policy. So a little bit more from that question earlier that we started with, please. And we will start with Reverend Jean-Marie, please.
Dean, thank you for that question. I really love this question in terms of what shapes my public theology. The theology that shapes me is womanism. I identify as a womanist practitioner that's on a journey of becoming. I'm always becoming. I'm a student of womanists. Womanism gives me the creativity and the permission to reimagine God, to see her in myself and love her fiercely, so that I'm able to see her in others too. Womanism gives me language to articulate the deep parts within. Womanism gives me the tools to ask questions, to not accept everything that's given to me, whether it be interpretation of scripture, stories and history, that's often whitewashed and mansplained. Womanism evokes my hermeneutic of suspicion, to examine what's given to me, to ask questions, to be in conversation with those who holds the stories, those who hold power, whether it be the preacher or the elected official, writing policy, making decisions about the lived experiences of people in my community. Womanism shapes my theology that reinterprets how I see myself, which also influences how I see those who hold power. To see my full humanity and say it is good, to embrace my divinity and live in my power unapologetically, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Womanism gives me permission to speak in spaces and to people where I'm often told to be silent, disrupting social norms that wants to control my God-given gifts and my power. Womanism unleashes the God within me for the sake of kingdom building. I read the text differently because of womanism. I see people differently because of womanism. I love deeply because of womanism. And I'm able to walk in the fire with fear and trembling because of womanism. Womanism gives me a sense of freedom to love and to dance, to speak truth to power and to listen to the cries of God's children crying for mercy, crying for change. And I join in the cries of those of my brothers and sisters. My work as a minister in the community is to cry with them and to walk in the fire. Womanism gives me the power to do that. Finally, womanism shapes me as a woman and a pastor, a follower and a leader. What shapes my public theology is womanism. Thank you.
All right. Reverend Dr. Harris, please help us.
Could you ask me to, Dr. Steele, I thought we were, I thought I'm muted. Okay. Dr. Steele, I thought we were friends. How could you ask me to follow up after that wonderful, wonderful /sermon? Amen. That's one of the things I love about the Black church and Black preachers in particular. We preach and we will preach anywhere. I thank God for, again, I mentioned by name earlier when talking about what forms and shapes me, friendships with folk like Charisma, who at my ordination came and told me that she would be there to check me all the time if I was not doing right. So you can see, amen, I thank God for streets named straight. What shapes, what theology shapes my engagement? In addition to what has already been mentioned, I'm going to say a theology of call. The fact that God called us, I'm going to speak for myself, calls me with full understanding of who I am, what I've done, and what I could do. The fact that God trusts me with ministry, trusts me with God's name, right? That always pushes me to do the best that I can, whether that is showing up, whether it's at the hospital bed or at the courthouse or Capitol Hill, whatever, how in any way that one can show up. It's just that God has trusted me with this time, with this context, with this moment. And so the great hymn of the church, "A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, never the dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve this present age, my calling to fulfill," right? So that's where it is for me. In addition to the other liberations of theologies of liberation, Black liberation, womanist liberation, all of those have at the center a love ethic, a love of self, and a love for the God who made us as we are, and accepting that and moving and acting in that love. So those are the things that shape me. Those are the things that push me and propel me, and all frames and references of engagement. Thank you for your question, Dr. Steele.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Harris. And then we're going to tag team and go to brother sister. So Minister Tolliver, please share.
Yes. I was going to say womanist theology, but after Reverend Charisma, there's nothing left to be said that I could say. So ditto in everything she said. I also would say that Black liberation theology certainly has helped to shape, and also queer theology. They have all helped me see God within myself and within humanity. They give me the curiosity to embrace myself and the God within me. And they also help me to get beyond my own selfish impulses of individualism and get back to the community, and get back to the community of humanity. And so these theologies cause me and shape so that I can't sit still when I see injustice, or see patriarchy, or see queer folks being treated unfairly. These theologies have shaped how I look at the world. They shape the community I serve, or help to shape how I serve that community, that I am no longer content, or I cannot be content that it's not me this time, but it makes me stand up and say something when I see the least of these being hurt and left out and being forgotten about. These theologies help to shape my ministry. They help to give me centering and calling, and they help to shape the work that I do, and the work that I do within the church, and the proclamation that I do within the church and outside of the church in my everyday life. It makes me go back to one of the first songs I learned as a child. Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world. These theologies make me go back to the simplicity, or the root of theology for me was that love is at the center. And if I am able to love all of humanity, if I'm able to see divinity in humanity, then my work is a lot easier. And I'm able to, not easier rather, my work is large, it has a larger scope, but also I can take some of the breaks and some of the limits off that I've learned in the church of who gets justice and who is able to assimilate and who is welcomed in these spaces. And now these theologies help me to welcome the stranger, help me to welcome those who are different from myself, that I know that I see Jesus in them, or I see the God in them. And those are what shapes me.
Watch your voice, Oliver. Watch your voice. All right, we're going to go next to Reverend Dr. Smith. Please help us.
I think I oftentimes ask the question, where is God in whatever the situation is, whether it's in a personal situation or it's a community situation, national or global. God, as we understand God to be omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And so we ask the question, I ask the question often, where is God? I don't ask it from the perspective of understanding that God is always pro whatever the situation is. Sometimes God is pro, sometimes God is anti, sometimes God is trying to compel us to a different understanding, a different place, even as I believe what God is doing right now. Now, I don't think that God creates all the issues and the drama and the things that go on in the world, that are going on in the world around us. I don't think God created, this is me speaking, created the pandemic, for instance, the pandemic of the virus. I don't think God created the pandemic of the social injustices here in this nation as well. But I do believe that God uses these opportunities to help us to see where are we and what are we going to do, and how are we going to find ourselves being that prophetic voice, speaking truth to power, walking with those who are the oppressed, helping to facilitate, helping to create a voice, for those who are the voices or those who do not have voices. I used a phrase not too long ago in an article that I wrote to the governor of the state of Tennessee, in light of his seemingly insensitivity to maybe it's his ignorance. It's not his insensitivity. I think it's his ignorance to understanding the whole dynamic of putting a felony charge against persons because of the fact they have a desire to speak truth to power, because they want to speak out against the injustices, and how it is that they don't need to frame it in such a way that the only way you can protest is if you're going to operate within the system. It goes back to what Tucker was talking about earlier. I think that is it's poor. It's a poor perspective that you feel like, okay, I'll allow you to do what you want to say, but you're going to say it based on what parameters I establish as well. I don't think God operates like that. God did not operate that biblically. God does not operate like that spiritually. God does not operate like that now, in terms of the fact we've got to work within the systems and the structures, particularly the systems and the structures that are oppressive and regressive. And, so we've got to ask ourselves the question, At least I asked myself the question, where is God in this? And how does God want me, desire for me to move? Whether it's me personally, whether it's our congregation, whether it's persons that I'm in association with. And it's not always easy to discern, particularly when there are good people who are on the wrong side of things. And you have there are some folk, particularly those from different generations, who understand things the way they understand things. And how do you still love them through that? And how do you still help them to understand that God may be speaking differently now than the way God has spoken previously? I think that's part of where there is some, hopefully, creative tension between generations, between my generation and between the generations, particularly, I know Minister Tolliver and I know Reverend Dr. Harris. I taught their dad at American Baptist College. And so how do we speak? How do we bridge these generations so that we can not necessarily speak the same way, but have the same kind of impetus? And I think our theology, because it's the same God, I think God is just speaking to different generations in different kinds of ways. And how do we get ourselves to get to the point of listening to God in a way that's going to make positive differences in the world around us?
Helpful, thank you. And then we'll go to Reverend X, please. What theology shapes your public engagement?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Steele. Also, I realized I started talking, I did not say thank you for this opportunity to be on this panel with these amazing people that I admire and have an opportunity to call friend. I am so thankful for being here on this evening. When I think about what shapes my theology, it is both scripture, but also my ancestors. I think about, in particular, not this week, the week before last, a couple of weeks ago, while doing this chaplaincy residency that I am doing, I had to come up with some pictures and do my grace map and talk about how I got to where I am using grace. And as I was going through finding pictures of family and all of that, I came across this picture of my grandmother. And she was in a picture with 3 other folks. And it was a newspaper article clipping. And it said that Negroes had come on Freedom Day to take the literacy test in order to register to vote. And she stood there as they took her picture. And I was like, wow, like this willingness to come to places where you will take my picture as a form of shame in order to try to harm me and to maybe even take away my employment because I have the audacity to be a Negro who wants to use my constitutional right to vote. That same blood flows through my body that says, Governor, if you aren't willing to expand Medicaid, well, you're just gonna have to arrest me because I understand that this is a need, that healthcare is a right for all people. And so it is this instance of knowing that my ancestors, those who came before me, were not just okay with the way in which that they were treated, but were willing to do whatever was necessary. And so very much so, like Dr. Smith just said about what the protest is not supposed to be comfortable. That's the whole point of a protest. And so if you're asking my protest to feel comfortable, then what you're really saying is that you just want me to say it's okay that you are fighting me. You want me to be fine with the way in which you disgrace my people and you don't see my humanity. And so for me, it is both watching the way in which my ancestors have done this work alongside with I would call Christ, the ultimate ancestors. I think about African spirituality. Jesus died on the cross, that ultimate sacrifice of his own life. And he says, it is how you treat the least of these. So my public theology is like, well, who are the least and why? And then what can I do to then help lift them up? Because I understand that when girls are lifted, the entire family and community are lifted. When you're dealing with Black folks and if they're locking me up, then it's problematic. So when you lift us up, that becomes something different happen. When LGBT folks are concerned about their capacity to maintain their marriages, the fear about losing their children because a Supreme Court justice might come, like, what can I then do to use my voice to do something different? Because the Jesus that I know sat with those who were on the margins and was constantly bringing people into the center, bringing people to the center. And also I would say the theology of table is important to me in my public theology. That what I love about the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, don't always get it right, but this idea of constantly making space, that you're going to keep putting a leaf in the middle of the table. We're going to keep putting leaves in because everybody's welcome here. Christ has made space for us all. And so then it is then my job as minister, as pastor, as just human being, to see the humanity in others and then allow, with all that I have in my bodies, to make space for their humanity to then to shine in ways, and that they have options and access. And so really, though, that's what really formed the way in which I show up publicly with my theology. It's about, like, what did Jesus do and why? And then why did Sojourner say, "Ain't I a woman?" Oh, I gotta say something. You know, what was Ida doing? She like, look, y'all killing my folks. I'm gonna have to write it down. Like, it is that type of thing that really pushes how I then show up publicly with my theology.
So helpful. Thank you. And your answers are a foreshadowing of things to come. So, Reverend Tucker, would you please finish off this round with your insights?
I guess, as I said earlier, and just in a little bit more detail, I guess I'm informed by liberation theology, Gustavo Gutierrez, then later Black liberation theology, and then the still unfolding body of work of womanist theology, sprinkled with some African spirituality in there. For me, it is the understanding, first of all, that this idea of American Christianity is perverted, that when the soul telos is when I die, I go to heaven, is problematic for me, which means that carrot stretched out in front of me should be enough for me to live in whatever ways that are presented to me because I have this hope. But Jesus says, when they were looking to see would he heal a man or forgive him of his sins, and he says, so that you may know that the Son of Man has the power to forgive sin, I tell you, take up your bed and walk. And so for me, the presence of God in humanity is what gives me the ability to believe in whatever it is after this right here. And so as I go to the text with this frame, I think in The Color of Compromise, Jamar Tisby's book, who historically shows how American Christianity has always been complicit in the race question, that we have to throw that out and rebuild our own. I have a saying, because I found out somewhere in life I can make up sayings too. And it's one of my foundational ones. When love is not the law, power and authority become necessary for social law. And that is what we see in American Christianity, that's centered in power and authority and not in liberation. Because if I read the Bible, Moses is a foster child who bucks the system. Nehemiah is an enslaved person who's doing all right in Mr. Charlie's house, but is disturbed about what's going on back home and wants to go and repair his community. When you look at the judges and the fact that God even calls people like me, knowing who I am to this work, is it's really humbling when you think about it. Because I've got some proclivities and propensities myself, but the God I have encountered gives me that hope and that strength. But to close up, what I'm saying here is even Jesus, I mean, turning over the table, it was a direct action. He occupied the temple until he left. He disrupted everything that they were doing, drove folk out, shut it down, turned over tables. I could see change and money rolling all over the floor and lambs and stuff running and pigeons flying. I don't know, Jesus looked like a ride to, I don't know, maybe even a looter. I'm just saying. So as I try to live in this world, you can't do big justice if it doesn't start with little justice. And how you treat each other, it's the folk in your life. And I think that's the big problem, is folks show up in society, but they don't live a life of little justice. So they don't understand the ramifications of seeking big justice. And that's why I think we see what we get now. You get celebrity activists, you get folk, you give them a grant and all of a sudden they're gone. But if you live little justice, you respect your children, you respect your wife, your sisters, your brothers, you treat people with value, it gives you a social warrant, I believe. That at the end of the day, even if you're not gonna do what I want you to do, I ain't got no problem telling you kiss my ass. But we will be back. But that's the theology, because God is against all that. Abraham Heschel, who talks about what manner of man is this, and says that he's kind of like a schizophrenic man in that he has his own self he brings to the moment, but he has been embedded and filled with either the love of God or the anger or the justice of God, and he has to act out of that. And so those things I mentioned earlier has informed what I think guides me in doing this work, is that it's not going to be given because you hold hands in the courthouse and pray. It's not going to be given just sitting at the church and lifting it up at the altar on Sunday morning. It's not going to be given, because when you look at even the text, what I love about the text is it tells the truth that we don't always want to own. With few exceptions, the prophets did not come from the religious establishment. They out in the field working and didn't come from preachers. The Lord said some of them out there where they shoeing horses, picking wheat, and they show up in town and say, hey. So it's out of those.
The Lord said.
I'm just saying, okay, I'm done.
Dr. Steele, I have to do this. It's in the comments, and if it's okay with you, Pastor Charisma, if you would give us, because you mentioned it with me, I think one of the things that's missing, and it's always central in so much of our preaching, I heard everybody on here preach, is the theology of the cross, and the theology of that important Saturday too, and the theology of Easter Sunday. And I think that underpins all of our work. And I'm saying this because I can think of one specific time I was with you and I was with Pastor Kelly X, and I thought to myself, these are the baddest sisters I know, because all of my life I've ran from jail, and y'all were like, I would get arrested, but I don't know if I have time today. And I thought to myself, these sisters are for real. So and underneath that stands an understanding that doing the things that Jesus did gets us crucified, but after the crucifixion comes the resurrection. So I'm gonna pass to either you, Reverend Charisma, because you mentioned it in the comments about a theology of Saturday, or you, Pastor Kelly, to talk about how that may inform. And I'm sorry, Pastor Steele, I'm gonna be quiet after this. I'm gonna be quiet. I won't do anything else.
You're fine. You're fine.
When we think about public policy in the Black church, I think the Black church has done a great job telling the story of Easter Friday, the crucifixion. And I also think the Black church has done a beautiful job telling the story of Easter, Resurrection Sunday, right? And we've created beautiful stories and displays of this resurrection. And that is, particularly for me, when I grew up in the church, that was the hope, right? That we have nothing to fear because Jesus is alive. What we don't do well, if I can say, is Easter Saturday. We skip over Easter Saturday. And Pastor Kelly, you mentioned chaplaincy. Chaplaincy have shaped and formed everything I've done, my CPE experience. Because during my CPE experience, Dean Steele, I watched and lived and sat with people who lived in Easter Saturday, never to get to Easter Resurrection Sunday. Oh. So what do we do, right? This year alone has been an Easter Saturday year for many people. We've lost lives. We've seen death way too much for a short period of time. People have lost houses, right? People have lost jobs. We are literally living in Easter Saturday in the midst of a very important election where healthcare is at risk to be dismantled in the middle of a pandemic. Easter Saturday. So for me, I think it's important for us. I believe the resurrection, telling the story of Easter Sunday and Jesus resurrecting is an important story to tell. But what happens, right? What happens when your congregation lives in Saturday, right? And so for me, Kelly, being a chaplain, offering the ministry of presence, to be present with people, to allow people to cry even if it's ugly and it interrupts our politics of politeness. The church, we want to be polite all the time when it's ugly, right? And we criticize those who are out in the streets rallying and protesting, and we say, well, why are they so violent and why are they so loud and why are they so disruptive? It's ugly. We in Easter Saturday, y'all. And until the church learns how to be present with people sitting in Saturday, we're going to always be irrelevant.
And that might, listen, that's a segue to the question about voting. And it, you know, and maybe metaphorically we can put voting as an action of Easter Saturday. And so let me ask you, let me just set this up, because according to the Secretary of State's office here in Tennessee, more than y'all listen, more than 727,000 people have already cast their votes. That's about 1 in 7 people in Tennessee. But we've seen a number of voter suppression tactics across the nation: poll relocations, poll closures, long lines, densely populated urban areas, short lines in the suburbs, voter roll purging, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you understand voting, and how do you inform your congregation or the people that you serve about voting? And what do we need to understand now? What do we need to understand in US elections regarding sort of the impact of voting across the board? And we're probably going to have to end with this question. So if you need to bob and weave in some other ideas, feel free to do so, because we will probably need to end here, okay? And we'll open this up to anyone, but we'll start with Dr. Smith and Reverend Tucker.
Well, you know, our congregation, my specific congregation, has a full understanding and appreciation to the importance of registering to vote and engaging in voting. and because that's just been our history. And because many of the people who are part of our congregation are fully aware of not only the struggles, but the lives that were lost, the sacrifice many persons have made, even beyond that, because some people don't get the history, but they also need to understand the importance of doing it. And the importance of doing it is because it does, not just because it's a nostalgic sort of thing that we do, but it does help to form policy. I keep hearing that, it was less, if I'm not mistaken, less than 100,000 votes in the election in 2016 that decided, that put us in the position we are right now, because of the fact of apathy in certain places, certain states. Now, Tennessee is lost in a lot of respects because of the fact, as I refer to it, we are a minority within a minority. Black folk here in the state of Tennessee, many of us do vote on the Democratic side of the ticket, but the Democrats are also a minority. So we are a double minority here in the state of Tennessee because of that. And but what we do is what I've seen. There's a very strong public campaign to tell people to get out there to vote. I don't think that the NBA is always on the right side of social justice issues, but for them to allow for them to to place the whole issue of voting out there. The NFL, a lot of entities have allowed for it to happen. Within our own congregations, pastors have to say it. We have to create opportunities. Now, how we do it in the midst of a pandemic, for instance, we would love to take people to the polls, but you can't put two people in the same van who are not from the same home, same environment, because of the fact of the social distancing piece. But we encourage them to be there. We at our church had a early voting rally at one of the locations here in Nashville, where we announced it. We told our people, come here to this place. We're going to vote between this time. I had a chance to vote during that time. Others have done that as well. So we have to find creative ways to make sure people understand the importance. Because if we had had just 100 out of the over 300 million votes that were cast in that election, less than 100,000 votes put us in the posture that we are right now. That has caused us to all be in wildernesses. And so we've got to find creative ways to do it.
Thank you. And I would argue that voting creates or establishes the circumstances around which some even experience Saturday. I dare say, you talk about that 100,000, we might not be here if that 100,000 had voted 4 years ago. So, I don't want to if Saturday is the inevitable. Much of what we do, we can, we have something to do with Saturday. Reverend Tucker, please.
Yeah, I'm sitting there listening to Charisma on her Saturday piece and listening to Kelly go out. Voting for me, as I talk to my congregation, is kind of historical in nature. And it's almost like our delivery is being hid in plain sight. When the framers set up this thing called a democracy, they made it hard to change because they knew how each other was. But they didn't have no consideration of us. So that the system that is put in place is not easily changed. And it is entered into when policies are influenced by the vote. That's why voter suppression makes sense. Let's keep them from the polls. Because if we go, Black, brown, and poor people go, then we take the seats that make the policies. In the book, Democracy in Chains, certain dominant folk understand that. They understand that clearly. And they operate in trying every way. And I think it's the criminal justice system, as Kendi says, that stamps us, that limits our possibilities economically, socially, and politically. So going to vote is part of my requirement for liberty, part of my requirement for flourishing, part of my wanting to be free is to go vote. So I keep going every time it happens because there is a system in place that is hard to change. And if we showed up, we could turn it over. Everybody thought that Hillary Clinton had it, even a lot of Black folks. But it was too late for the apparatus to even adjust to the public sentiment that was behind Barack Obama. You couldn't get no money behind that. It had already switched. And that same thing exists today. And that's why these myths about my vote don't count and it don't matter and all of that. And but we miss, because it's hiding in plain sight. I don't want you to go to the polls. This redistricting, even the fact that Trump called off the remainder of time for the 2020 census, so that when it's time to redraw the lines, now, see, because they can't change the system, now they draw the lines in a way that mess with our representation. Still, if enough of us go and fill those seats, we're the ones in the room when it's time to redraw the line. We're the ones who make those choices. So voting is part of my liberation. Voting is my voicing of my ethical and moral understandings of how I need to be in the world. And I don't know, we say that Jesus says, you know, you'll know the truth and the truth will make you free. Free Negroes always make bound Negroes uncomfortable. Because we see stuff that bound Negroes don't see. It's at the polls. The millennials need to hear it. It's at the polls. Yeah, somebody died for it. You don't want to hear that, but it's still at the polls. If you're not in the room, then that same system will always do what it has done. It will dispatch the body snatchers to handle you. And so it's at the polls. Because if it's at the polls and if we get the seats, then we're the ones who won't dispatch the body snatchers.
Yeah.
So for me, even while we wait on this evangelical idea of hearts changing, if you just make laws and enforce them, I really don't care about your heart. My life would be a more just one if just the laws were right. So if we want to see a change, I believe that's what God has put there, and it's hiding in plain sight. Got to get the numbers.
We got to get the numbers in the post. Thank you. I appreciate it. Now I'm going to do something unprecedented. I'm going to ask that the panelists, if you would put your closing remark in the chat, because I'd like to turn this over now to Dr. Forrest Harris, if you would please, for final remarks. And Dr. Smallwood, if you have final remarks as well. I want to thank each of you. This has been, I can't even put words to it. It's been theologically rich. It's been like a theological feast. You have given us much to think about. And also you put some extra running in our feet. But I always appreciate that because times are of the essence right now, and we have a tendency to get weary. And so we appreciate the thoughtfulness, the reflection, and the energy and passion with which you all brought tonight. So appreciate you so much. If you would just go ahead and put a closing thought in the chat, and then I'm going to turn this over to Reverend Dr. Smallwood and the illustrious Reverend Dr. Forrest Harris. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say.
No, go ahead, Teresa.
I'm really, I am speechless. You all have done a marvelous job. And Dr. Steele, I really have to thank you because your methodology has been exceptional in terms of how it is that we can frame our thoughts around policy and make it something that is relevant to the Black church. But I have to say thank you to my dear, dear sister, Reverend Charisma John Marie, Nikki Tolliver. I got to get to know you even better, sister. Y'all have been amazing. And brothers, my goodness, thank you. You have set the bar high for what I want to see when I go to look for a preacher. Amen.
Amen.
Reverend Harris, Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Smallwood, and to this panel, thank you for your prophetic fire. Thank you for, actually, the Sojourners magazine says that there's a roadmap for moral resistance that we ought to start walking. And I think you have given us that roadmap of moral resistance for the problems that we are challenged in the church and in the society that we live. Let me announce some events that are upcoming that I think the public will be interested in. On October the 27th, Kelly Mills Smith Institute on Black Church Studies Relevant Religion Series panel, Spiritual Revolution, Radical Spirituality for a Just World will take place. And the panel, Otis Moss III, Ivor Carruthers, Bishop Yvette Flonder are on that panel. And then on October the 28th, 2020, we are holding a celebration honoring the 100th anniversary of Kelly Mills Smith Jr. The symposium.
That would be great, Mr. Junior. You mean senior.
I do mean senior. I get both of you mixed up at points. I do mean senior. Activism then and now, equipping for the road ahead, faith, policy, and justice. It's a virtual symposium, and on the centennial birthday in commemoration of Kelly Mills Smith Sr. So you're invited to share that, and we look forward to all of these kinds of rich conversations continuing. And let me thank Amy Steele, Dr. Amy Steele, and all of you for a profound evening of dialogical power. I call it prophetic fire. Nobody can put out such fire when it is embodied in the very ethos and personalities of people like yourself who give leadership in our city and in our nation. I think, and I know that not only the vote at the polls, but the voice that the vote will create for our people will be sustainable as we go forward in the future to make a change in this world. And then we start creating our own reality, and we establish new systems for a new humanity that the system will never create for ourselves. Thank you so much.
And good night.
And good night.